On December 7th, 2022, the Nova Scotia government released Our Climate, Our Future, Nova Scotia's Climate Change Plan for Clean Growth. This plan is meant to provide the roadmap for how Nova Scotia is going to tackle the climate crisis. In this video series, Voices on the Climate Plan, we speak with different community members, leaders, and organizers to get their thoughts on how the plan measures up to this huge task. All 6 videos will be available on our YouTube channel, so be sure to check them all out.
Medawlin, Dalusin, Biwgwes, Madalaw, Gitbujinum. I have 3 names. Gitbujinum is my latest iteration I got from the elders. It means eagle. I'm from Winpegajuik, it's outside of Bathurst, New Brunswick, Mi'kmaq Elnu community. And I live here now in Jabuktuk, the Great Harbour, and I teach at St. Mary's University. I'm assistant professor in Indigenous literature and culture in the Department of English.
What we're mostly going to talk about is the concept of Netukulimk in the climate plan. But before we talk about it in the plan, can you talk about what that concept means to you and your experience with it?
Before I understood Netukulimk as a term, like a buzzword that was coined, I remember growing up in the community, we were always taught a reverence for nature. Don't take more than you need. So before I heard Netukulimk, I heard don't take more than you need from the elders. We'd go out hunting. We'd hunt deer, for example, with my father. After the deer was caught, we'd pray, say our Al-Sudamalkan, our prayers, to the spirit of the deer, thank it for giving its life for us to eat it. And in the spring of the next year, we'd replace what we took by giving apples to the baby deer. Out in the woods, different relatives, my father included, different elders. As a youngster, I remember taking my axe and chopping a living tree, and they'd say, don't do that, the tree's your relative. I remember them even getting teary-eyed about it, saying, that's your relative. Out in the woods, we would fall, like older dried out trees, we'd fall them and use them for firewood. We were always mindful of conserving energy out on the land, as well as not taking the life of stuff in vain, like just, wantonly. So I remember getting those lessons out in the land. I remember learning we use every part of the animal, every part of whatever life we take, and to replace it with something, whether that be tobacco, giving tobacco as an offering, or different things. Being mindful of nature's ability to prosper in its own sense as a collective. The primary thought that we had in Winpegajuik was that you let the land live, let the land grow and have its own life of sorts, and you never take so much that you would end the possibility of the land flourishing as a collective. So before the buzzword, I remember the practice of it out on the land and the seriousness of it. It wasn't something to be taken lightly. The elders were always telling us in the language, in English as well, that the earth is your relative. If there's a tree out there, your life is more important than that tree. You're part of the circle. You're part of the Earth Mother, so nothing's above life.
When did you start seeing it used as a buzzword?
Well, I seen Netukulimk come up. Albert Marshall talks about Netukulimk. Kenny Prosper, different people have coined the term and worked on it. I've seen it in literature with regards to fishing and stuff like that. There was a book that went around, Mi'kmaq fishing. Netukulimk, they talk about sustainable livelihood off the land and things like that. To my understanding, it's an idea of conservation. Outside the Indigenous community, they tend to take to the highest limit without destroying the fishery, for example. But within my community, they look at what's the limit and they go below that. They don't want to go towards that line or race towards that line and play in that game. So I see commercial fishery, commercial forestry, and stuff like that. Reasonable livelihood comes up, that term a lot. But on the land, we took what we needed, and that was it. We didn't go beyond that. I mean, some people exploited the resources, I'm sure, but as a practice in my community, with my family and my group, we're always mindful that Netukulimk to us was not taking more than we need. So we took what we needed to build a domicile, for example, to have food and things like that, to make tools. And when we were younger, a lot of things that were broke were fixed. Our technologies would go back to the land. Say we made a drum, for example. If there was a hole in it, you played too much and your mallet goes through it, the materials would all go back to the land. There was no synthetics. So either you could repair it by taking the frame and putting a new skin over the frame, and getting sinew, replacing something that might have came loose. There was a focus on fixing things that I find changed a lot. Now in more recent times, you see a lot of people not fixing stuff anymore and just like buying new, obsessed with new, having something new all the time. To live sustainable now, I find, I was having this conversation with one of my colleagues, one of my friends, we said it's to appear poor in a certain way, because if you stop taking part in fast fashion, for example, people say, hey, you don't have the latest stuff all the time. If you fix something, like get it, something torn, you fix it, people say, oh, why do that when you can just get into something new? Sustainability for me is about practicing Netukulimk, and before we knew what the term was, we were just doing it. Yeah.
One of the principles that the plan is based on, that it says, is Netukulimk. How do you feel about the way that it's used?
Mm-hmm. Well, Netukulimk for me meant provisions. Then it was coined to mean this philosophy of our respect and honoring the Earth Mother, Sitkamu, the Earth. And then it was brought in this report, and I read through the report. So I seen it was introduced at the start, and I said, oh, Netukulimk, okay, this concept's going to be the concept I know from community that was coined by the elders, and it's going to reference this. And then as I read through it, I got mired in a lot of facts being presented and stuff, and the story became convoluted. And then near the end of it, I was thinking, oh yeah, where was Netukulimk throughout it? I hadn't seen it. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it felt like it was front-ended and then there was nothing about it. And I'm wondering how that influenced the report itself. I know the Nova Scotia government had other reports that they put out defining Netukulimk and stuff like that, so I know they know the concept. But whoever wrote the report had a superficial presentation of it without any concepts of Netukulimk in it. My understanding from where I'm from about Netukulimk is you don't take more than you need, and I understand that Duwaptamamk or Duait Sing, but Netukulimk has no yeah but. It's not negotiable. Like, if something is causing trouble to the earth, you stop this practice. You can't say, okay, let's incorporate a little Western thought in that. And I think that's the true magic of Netukulimk, or to bring it down to earth, the need of it is to have a dissenting opinion. So when I think of Netukulimk, I think of it as uncompromising. So I don't really see how they could incorporate it if they still want to talk about resource extraction and stuff like that. Practices that are affecting the climate, it should just be stopped, full stop. So when I think about Netukulimk, I admire that it doesn't give way to opinions and stuff like that. Like Netukulimk is, don't take more than you need. That's it. It's uncompromising. It's indigenous intellectualism. It's inconvenient for capital interests, things like that. But yeah.
What would have to change for the plan to actually be in alignment with those values?
Yeah, if you want to be in alignment with Netukulimk, it's the principle of it is you don't take more than you need. There's no secret that Indigenous people are hiding on sustainability, or some people think that they have some sort of myth of the connection to Earth and have some secret of how we can avoid climate crisis and that. We've been saying it all along, very plain language, don't take more than you need. So for me, it's uncompromising. If you're going to write a report and include it, the practices you identify that you want as targets to end the effects you're having on the Earth Mother, then they just end. You don't negotiate a profit out of it. So, like, we'll stop to a certain extent, but we want to guard our shareholders, and it's not part of that thinking. So I think there was a disservice or a debasement to Indigenous intellectualism when outsiders came here and said, your technology is antiquated. It looks like cave people tools, like what is this and that. I argue that they're green technology that's very much at the apex of the technology they needed to be and never went further. I always tell people this: we didn't need synthetics. Everything went back to the earth. So what a great tech. Oral traditions, right? Everyone's like, this company, that company, we're so trendy, we're so sustainable, we're going paperless. Well, oral traditions, right? We had really sophisticated, and still do have sophisticated ideas and takes on things about sustainability and things like that. And when I think about Netukulimk in particular, I think about that as being an equalizer for the Earth Mother in a way. Like, this is a line we don't cross. I don't know at what point in our collective cultural history where we may have already crossed that point in the millennia before and said that's the line that we don't cross. So when we think of that, I don't take more than I need because I understand that I'm cradled by all of the Earth Mothers, whatever offers. An example is back home, we take a few berries and leave the rest for animals to come and eat, like the bear, for example. We take a few blueberries. We're always mindful of the stories of the flora and fauna existing with us and them being part of that network too. So it's not always me. It's not a Delta model where I'm on top, I rule the world, I can do whatever I want. I'm part of the system and I have to make room for other things that exist in that system.